Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to another edition of Author Conversations with Rabbit House Press. I'm Erin Chandler, and there's Emily Wilhoit down on the bottom left of the Zoom conversation. And we're here excited to introduce our latest book, Chronicles of Two Wolves, A Path to Heart Spirit. And it's written by Palmer Tolly and James Riordan. Now, James is, we can't see him because he's being very mysterious. No, it's just we couldn't do computer malfunctions, but we may be able to see him in a minute. But in the meantime, we're just going to hear from him. I'm going to start by just reading a quote about this extraordinary book. And this is by David Thundering Eagle Fallis, Principal Chief of the Kentucky Southern Cherokee. As one who attempts to understand the many aspects of Cherokee spiritualism, I found myself learning so much as to why I've been led down so many different paths in my own search for peace and truth. Chronicles of Two Wolves speaks to the heart. The heart does indeed have its own spirit and is offered so beautifully by Palmer. Two Wolves is a journey everyone needs to take. Okay, with that, Palmer's husband, Paul Osborne, is going to introduce the book. Let me briefly tell you, well, when Palmer comes in, I'll introduce a bit about the authors, but please, Paul, do the introduction to the book.
Well, certainly. It starts with a group of wisdom keepers. And it says, wisdom keepers and sage ancestors gather at an astral convergence to create a plan to assist those in need into future generations. Two Wayas, which are wolves in Cherokee, named Igahi and Shadow Dancer, are assigned to travel the earth plane and beyond to discover Sipapu. It is believed by the ancient ones that Sipapu is a sacred portal to heart spirit. It is thus said that upon the discovery of the elusive portal, a path will open for higher consciousness and healing on the planet. From regal forests to vast vistas and Hopi territory of the Southwest, the wolves will pursue their destiny. The quest of Igahi and Shadow Dancers mysteriously connected to the true life experiences of the two boys from Paragould, Arkansas. One, Rick, and his younger brother, Calvin. They navigate through multiple legal name changes, the cruelty at the hands of their second adoptive parents, only to face the injustice of a complacent legal system. Encounters with indigenous medicine people from Pine Ridge Reservation of South Dakota, the Two Feathers Medicine Clan of Illinois and Indiana, and unusually surprising yet promising for Rick and Calvin. As Igahi and Shadow Dancer venture forth, they cross paths with guides and guardians along the way, including a sacred clown, Kachina, a raven named Jesse, and the pulsing constellation of Orion overhead in the night sky. The authors pump metaphoric symbolism into the saga while maintaining the integrity and clarity that truth is indeed stranger than fiction. There's a clever weaving of basic quantum physics with ancient wisdom leaves the reader to question what once was thought to be magic may simply be unknown higher consciousness. Perhaps a perfect storm for miracles is not only possible, but unstoppable, even in a mundane urban existence. There have been poignant stories that fascinate the mind, grab the imagination, and touch the spirit, remaining forever unforgettable. This is that story. It is Lord of the Rings meets a boy named It. It is The Education of Little Tree meets The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. A review by Cindy Crowwoman, clan mother of the Two Feathers Medicine Clan, states, in the Chronicles of Two Wolves, A Path to Hard Spirit, Tolly weaves a magical path of spirituality, wonder, the human condition, and especially truth, leaving us with one of spirit's greatest gifts, hope.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul, so much. Now I want to introduce you to, I'm so glad we can see you, James. We've about right in time. So our two gorgeous authors of this book that is so much more. It is, we do a lot of memoir and nonfiction, and this is nonfiction. But it is also an education in the indigenous people's wisdom. It's from experts. It's so many things. And then at the heart of it, the journey of this boy to Palmer's son in life, her adoptive son, that she will talk about that journey in a little bit, and about him finding himself, finding his heart spirit, finding his path. And he did find it through his heritage, American heritage. Now, American Indian heritage. Now, Palmer is one of the writers of this book, and Palmer is a musician by trade, and the head of the orchestra, Paul, who you just met, Paul and Tom, what is the orchestra called?
The Metropolitan Contemporary Jazz Orchestra.
The Metropolitan Contemporary Jazz Orchestra. She's also a clinical psychiatrist and psychologist, and worked for many years in Kankakee outside of Chicago, which is where she and James met, and working with foster children and abused children. And it was very heavily in that world, and has met with, which we'll talk about, so many leaders around the world about this issue. But when she teamed up with James Riordan, who's also a musician and a rock and roller by trade and a famous author, who we were a rock journalist, you were all kinds of things, but you wrote the definitive book on Jim Morrison called Morrison, which is a New York Times bestseller, and then consequently a book about Oliver Stone, called Stone, and you were the on-set advisor for the movie when Val Kilmer played Jim Morrison. And so right outside Chicago, I have so many questions. I know that you all probably met and bonded, you two writers, on it with your musical talents. But and James, you've written 20 something books, I think, haven't you? And so when did you and Palmer hook up in a musical way, and how did it come about that you'd started this journey, Chronicles of Two Wolves, that part spiritual, part truth, all truth, but anyway, how did that happen? I think you have to unmute.
Okay. We're not hearing Jim.
We're not hearing you right now. Is there an unmute? Maybe we can call Palmer and hear you like we were, and we'll have the computer going and the phone going, which is kind of how we do things. Oh no.
He's got his phone too now.
Okay. We were just hearing you right then a minute ago.
There we are.
No?
You've got a busy signal, if you can hear me, Jim. Yes. Yeah. Go for it, Jim.
I will. Walker and I met through mutual friends. Fun.
I think you have to hold the phone a different way. Or hold on to.
Yes.
Talked a lot about our musical backgrounds, people that we worked with, and also psychology. And I worked with a lot of kids. I ran a teen center for a while, and I generally work with teens in trouble a lot, which is all of them. And it's a really tough age, it's tougher now than it ever was. And so we had a lot of mutual interests. And when she started telling me Rick's story and the story of the cultural significance of the Indian culture involved in it, then I really was encouraging her she should do a book, and kind of began with that.
Yeah, I love that you all both. And Kankakee is a community of artists. It seems a lot, but it's right outside Chicago, right?
Just 2 miles south.
Right.
It's it's really a middle class factory town, and I think I have a theory that I talk about in one of my books, that the compression of creative people trying to fit into that format kind of led to a cultural explosion. And you have kind of a reactionary thing. So you have a lot of people from here that are artists, songwriters, writers and things like that. And it's almost, it's not like the culture promoted it, but the reactions promoted it.
I was so warmed by the fact that not only there was so many musicians and artistic people, but such a heavy community with helping the children in trouble. And if I could, before I have, and Emily, you jump in whenever you want to say anything. I'll have too much, but before I'm just going to give like a tiny synopsis of what happened to Palmer's son before she does. Do you mind doing a reading, Palmer, first?
I'd love to.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just to give you a sense of how heartfelt and heartbreaking the story is, her son Rick was from right around Illinois, correct? Right around Illinois. With where was he born?
He was born in Perigold, Arkansas.
Arkansas. And he and so what happened was he had, as we know in Kentucky all too well, ended up being raised by his grandparents, which happens his parents were a little troubled, and he had 7 years, I believe, of really nice, beautiful experiences with his grandparents. And his grandparents, which one thing could be shocking, met this couple, the Bensons, at a bingo game. And they decided and they were childless. They decided to adopt these 2 boys. And what came after, I don't know if it was 2 years, but was sheer torture, they abused these 2 boys beyond belief, and Rick most. And Palmer met him after the police had intervened finally, after he had been tied up, and it was just a really traumatic event. And then Palmer started becoming sort of his foster mother on the weekends when they could allow, and started guiding him. And the way this book goes is it goes between this fantasy world of wisdom, and every page of this, every chapter that starts is some kind of deep wisdom, like, mystical crumbs, as he was finding the crumbs of how to find himself back to himself. Symbols are powerful because they're visible signs of invisible realities, St. Augustine. And so Palmer basically took the hand of this young boy, and he found his own way. And it was him that found, his own people and his heritage. But Palmer guided him right through in the most amazing way. And you will read this book, all the way through from his troubled childhood to where he found where he could find his heart spirit. And so just with that, would you read an excerpt, Palmer?
Yes, and I'd like to introduce it by saying that from one chapter to another, there is a parallel between what is mythology of these two wolves making this journey to find the portal, to find heart spirit. And it parallels with the actual documentation of the lives of Rick and his brother Calvin along the way. So the excerpt that I'm going to read has to do with the journey of the Wechas or wolves. And this is a chapter called A Raven Named Jesse. Many of the old trees had fallen, hinting Mother Nature had been a bit slack with her housekeeping. The recent storms had scrambled things up a touch. Scraps of branches from large sycamore heaped on their path. Shadow Dancer and Igahi took caution, stepping in a little slower stride. Their trek was growing more capricious as they navigated around a carpet of tangled brambles. In spite of their cunning as Gama wolves, they began to harbor doubts of their prowess as hunters of Sipapo. Turbulence in the air was accompanied by sounds of flapping wings. A large raven, known by the name of Jesse, swooped down, landing on a rock covered with layers of dead leaves. The trio seemed pleased to see one another. Their paths had crossed before and always under favorable circumstances. The relationship between wolves and ravens was not just symbiotic, but also playful. Sometimes the wolves would respond to a raven's call, heralding a great find, food, which gave ample feast for one and all. With instincts maximized from their pleasant reunion, it was understood that the raven would help them find an alternate path to their destination. As the bird lifted off in the green corn moon, Shadow Dancer and Igahi followed. Jesse led them to an enchanting landscape, a region densely blanketed with a flora of eerie splendor. The Waichas' eyes dilated at the sights and the sounds of a whippoorwill near a glistening stream. An opportunity to rest at the mouth of a cavern was not missed. Their eyes wandered into the night sky. The glint of a shooting star darting above them seemed to leap about for their mere pleasure. In the southern hemisphere during summer months, astrological designs were typically visible from Earth. One constellation, however, radiated with exceptional brightness, Orion. The well-known astrological formation of great stature in indigenous cultures. There was, however, a unique and profound connection between the Hopi people and the Orion constellation. The Hopi are believed to have settled in a location they consider to be the center of the universe. When connected to other Hopi monuments and landmarks around the Southwest, the collective group forms a map of the entire constellation of Orion. The celestial pattern, familiar to the Wechas or the wolves, was perceptible from deep inside the cave as well. Bioluminescent worm colonies mimicking the night sky hung from the ceiling in hammocks of their own silk. Delicate threads hung down like Mardi Gras beads. Naive moths were tricked by the dangling sticky strings that shimmered like crystal chandeliers. A clear and distinct recreation of the constellation Orion punctuated the otherwise blackness in the cave. The masquerade of the night sky was indeed an effective decoy, and the host would feast well tonight. As the trio retreated, Jesse flew into the opening, leading Igahi and Shadow Dancer towards a particular symbol. A shallow carving in the outer part of the cave was that of a Hopi Kiva. Now, in Hopi tradition, it is ceremonial. It's a ceremonial structure that's round and partly underground for rites and political meetings. But in a deeper meaning, a kiva represents the point where the Hopi people first emerged from darkness into light. Igahi and Shadow Dancer understood that the recreation of the constellation deep inside the cave was beyond chance or coincidence, as was the carving of the Hopi Kiva, a subtle clue. Bidding farewell with a nod of gratitude, Jesse and the Watchers parted. Soaring into the heavens, Jesse's final message to Igahi and Shadow Dancer: follow the stars.
Beautiful.
Yay!
That's beautiful.
Chapter 5.
Board.
Emily, what was you, when we first got this, we were so excited about finding this manuscript. What was it that made you so much want to publish it?
Well, I feel like it imparted a piece of Native American indigenous peoples' culture and spirituality that would not be available generally to the public for consumption. So, and the way that it's used in metaphor, from what I understand, to represent the journey, the internal and external journey of Two Wolves, is something that I thought was extraordinarily creative and engaging, because I felt like it was two stories happening at the same time that compelled you to want to know more. I don't know if my interpretation is correct.
No, I think it's absolutely. I think it's absolutely correct. It's it intertwines it with the actual dates of, the document in the case of the people's, the state of Illinois versus Robert Benson, defendant, on the date of June 28th, 1994. The defendant, Robert Benson, withdraws his plea of guilty, and he gets aggravated battery to a child. And the defendant, it's all court documents, and the raw emotion of the son, Rick, who was able to, which I believe James is going to read part of the naming ceremony, but his journey to getting out of this situation, not knowing where his grandparents were, surviving these truly evil people, and then just these raw little encounters from this young 15-year-old to say, after a while, the Bensons started to let us have it. They started getting meaner and meaner as the stay went by. Richard had to wash dishes, and he didn't really clean them right. And Diana found out and made me watch as she screamed at Richard and started breaking plates over his head. Richard started crying in pain. Diana just laughed at him. I stood back in horror. And then, the journal of, it's really, and then you begin, you get this horrifying slap of reality. And then the next chapter, it's lightning and Galasiv. I don't know how to pronounce that. And it says the universe, pardon me?
Anagaliska.
Please. The universe is a fractal. Whatever energy signature we carry will be repeated infinitely again and again until we change that vibration. Paige Bartholomew, which are all of the things that I've been studying forever with Joseph Campbell and this and all the other traditions. And then to hear it and study it and see how the Native Americans interpret how to erase, you hear all of this about the getting in the like in Yellowstone when they get in the camps and they wash it all away, the past away. And we really are, and I just love the parts of we are the stone, we are this, we are we are everything. And what is the saying that which is the same as namaste? I see you.
Yeah, Aho Mitakuye might be the one you're talking about.
Atoma Wakiase, that's
They're all
Lakota.
repeated, every stone, every tree, every molecule.
Yes.
We
And
are
that's
all
short. It's
so-
short. How do you say the shortened version? Which is just a greeting or acknowledgement.
Mitakuye. It's Lakota. Yes.
Lakota.
But it's universally used. Other Native tribes also say it, but I would not want to speak for, all Indigenous people. But it was used in the Two Feathers Medicine Clan as a common prayer of like a blessing that we're all one.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a blessing that I know Emily and I, and it's something, I swear this is something that I will learn from forever and pick up and remind myself that we are, and the way that he went about it, and I'm going to let James read, but the way he went about letting go, shedding his past and embracing everything he is was so beautiful. So James, would you like to read that excerpt or anything you want?
Chapter 21. The beginning of wisdom is to call things by their proper name. Confucius. There was a stigma for Rick in carrying the surname Benson. It represented to him some lingering ownership that the adopted parents still had over him. The label brought intense psychological suffering to him, denying both his identity as David's family member and his humanity as a person. Attending a monthly pipe ceremony, Chanupa, Rick approached Richard Pony Soldier Bird, Uncle Richard, after the ceremony and asked that he please give Rick a name, a Native American name, petitioning that he did not want to continue to be Rick Benson. Uncle Richard knew his difficult history well. He took Rick aside and made arrangements for a visit to the Bird home in Chicago for lessons in the traditions. Upon completing visits with his mentor, Uncle Richard informed Rick that a name would be given him at the next Chanupa gathering, the naming ceremony. On that auspicious day, the Two Feathers Medicine Clan members sat on the floor in a circle with the prayer pipes, as was customary. However, on this day, as they continued to hold the sacred energy of their circle, Rick was instructed to come forward. Richard Pony Soldier shared that the naming is a very important tradition among their people, and that he and other warriors had been in prayer, asking for guidance for the spirit name to be given to Rick. Following prayers, according to protocol, he proclaimed, "You have been given the name Rick Two Wolves. You have been given the name Two Wolves." The assembled 5 periods and the other members repeated the name 4 times together. Rick Two Wolves, Rick Two Wolves, Rick Two Wolves, Rick Two Wolves. The spirit no longer carried the name Benson. In this space and place in the universe stood Rick Two Wolves, a young warrior of strong spirit, dignity, and healing. This was his family, and he was there. His mother would always say, "My name is Two Wolves." Not long after this, Rick decided he wanted to legally change his name. The Department of Children and Family Services had assigned a guardian ad litem named Sherry Carr, an attorney appointed by the court to represent the legal interests of the minor. She was a petite woman with a heart of gold, who took her commitment to advocacy for the wards of the state to a level not seen often in court systems. She was known for being a voice for the voiceless. Judge Musselman questioned Rick on the virtue of changing his name. Rick was strong in his stance. He wanted to keep Ricky Wayne, his first and middle name, as given to him by his biological parents, and take his spirit Native American name to be his surname. With pride and courage, he told the judge that he was a Native American and that the last name was given to him by his uncle, Richard Pony Soldiers of the Two Feathers Clan. His mom, Homer, stood by his side in court and gave her support to his request. The name Benson was legally erased. His attorney then proceeded to complete the formal process. The judge signed the order declaring that on this day, your name is now Ricky Wayne Two Wolves. A phoenix from the ashes, the world would know him as Ricky Wayne Two Wolves. His heart has always harbored the kindness and wisdom of the two wolves. The Darkhold people did not see, nor would they understand that the child they abused was always a beautiful spirit. More importantly now, Rick Two Wolves knew. He was adamant that only his birth family from Arkansas were allowed to call him Ricky, preferring Rick by all others. In the realms of higher consciousness, the incredible and not seemingly impossible events had been unfolding. The two children, Rick and Michael, lost in darkness, had been transported onto a dangerous and perilous road. However improbable, blessed encounters with people of good heart and spirit also turned up on their path. This included Joseph Big Fellow Schlamo, chief of the Two Feathers Medicine Clan, Richard Pony Soldier Bird, ceremonial leader who gifted Rick with the name Two Wolves, and Godfrey Chips, medicine man from the Pine Ridge Reservation. Joseph Many Dark Horse Davis was a mentor to Rick. A circle of loving families, supportive friends, and caring therapists stood by his side. Michael, living a few miles from his brother, became part of the family who accepted him and helped him in his healing journey. Although his emotions would be repeatedly tested, Michael proved to follow an intensely honest search of his authentic self, discovering himself beyond the childhood nightmares. Becoming a seeker of wisdom, he was drawn to a higher consciousness. The process would be difficult and at times seemingly overwhelming. When the time was right for him, he would create his own renaming ceremony reflecting the name of his spirit. The choice of the name Calvin would be inspired from the comic strip Calvin and Hobbes by the American cartoonist Bill Watterson. The choice of the surname was in accordance with his wishes. That will not be made public in this book. Crossing dimensions. The constructs of time and space create an illusion. Timeline, Rick Two Wolves' life, were distinctly separate from the events of the way is. The reality of the four-dimensional universe, such would be its truth. They indeed would exist separately, but there are other realities. The limitation of conventional thought, including cultural bias, may influence the acceptance or non-acceptance of the theory of multidimensional realities that are parallel. The obvious exception, of course, being students of quantum physics, gifted visionaries, intuitives, science fiction writers, and very imaginative children. Since the advent of quantum mechanics, there is a growing acceptance of multidimensional theories. As the noted physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson states, so many questions we have about our lives make no sense in the higher coordinate system. Just as an ant cannot understand the plane of space above, so are humans limited to multidimensional worlds beyond fourth level. Wisdom keepers have roamed the earth since primordial times, protecting the sage trees. Teachers are proclaiming that it's now time to set forth the intentions for humankind and the planet through the knowledge of oneness. Such principles can now be seen as a fusion of quantum science and ancient knowledge.
Thank you so much. And that is what is so powerful about this book, is that it is all of this ancient knowledge from, like, when you're bringing in Neil Tice deGrasse, who I adore, and all the ancient teachers that we've all listened to in the different Buddhist cultures. It's all there. And then a real lesson in the American Indian culture, but then wrapped around a very simple story about one young man and a woman that literally saved his life. And Palmer, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Well,
You wrote a book about it. You're like, I wrote a book about it.
I would like to say that the whole experience of writing the book, I have to acknowledge Jim, okay, because I would never have. I kept all these papers, all the documents, just because they were meaningful to me, and they were meaningful in Rick's life. but I would not have done anything with them if it hadn't been for Jim. And when we started out on this project over 10 years ago, he was my mentor, kind of a godfather, kind of a kooky character, you know. When I came to him with theories of experiences like the visions, he took me at my word. And he's a serious person to mess with, you know. And he never questioned my the reality that I was sharing with him, and he validated me. And I just wanted to say thank you, Jim.
Thank you for everything you've done.
Okay, I have a question for Palmer. When you talk about your reality and your visions, and that's illustrated in the book, do they come from like actual perceived visual occurrences, or are they metaphor for your emotional and psychological experiences?
Since I use metaphor so much, I think that's a good question to clarify. In my reality, in my experience, when I describe, for example, having a peripheral vision of an image of an ancient elder Indian, it was a real thing. It wasn't metaphoric. When I speak of other images, I don't want to be a spoiler for the book, of other things that I experienced, I truly, in my reality, it was a real thing. It wasn't metaphoric. I question whether I should own that in a book and make it public, because usually if people are saying they have a vision, they're kind of weird. And in our common society. But somewhere along the soul search for that concept, I realized that I wasn't really special because I had those. It was there for a reason. And that if I hid it or denied it, I would not open the door for other people to own their own power and their own visions when they had it. And so I would be living in a false reality instead of the true reality. I don't believe that it's like, at first I thought you had to be some kind of prophet or something. And I didn't want to look like I was trying to claim that. I don't think that's true anymore. I think anybody on a given moment could have inspiration, could have insight, could have enlightenment, and it can happen. And it's not because you're special. It's just because you're you.
And because you're open.
I think, in fact, I use an example in there where Rick is asked at some point about visions, and I used my own explanation through him to say that it doesn't relate to any kind of status or anything like that, but it is a perfect storm in a good way. It has to do with energy, certain frequencies of vibration, just hitting at a particular time, and the receptivity or the openness of that at that moment. That's all.
Fascinating. I'm really excited to push this book and let people inside that world.
Yeah. Thank you all.
I'm so excited about it too, because the wisdom, I know we have to stop in a few minutes, but Two Wolves is questioning and Shadow Dancer answers. Of course, there's a downside in shadow work. We're not born into thinking dark thoughts about ourselves. It's learned. It's modeled and reinforced by lower evolved individuals who function in a consciousness calibration of dense energies. Feelings of shame, guilt, prejudice, and fear feed the negative mind thoughts. Negative thoughts feed errors and self-beliefs. My greatest hope is that this mission will help the humans to learn the power of communicating only those thoughts that heighten the awareness and insight. And in my, it's in my, and I've found some of the things that I learned that we talk about in my meditation group, and it's all there. And there's another, I won't look for it, but there was another wonderful excerpt that was talking about the seeker is looking for what we're all seeking. And it's the seeker. It's all the awareness behind. It's all this thing behind. It's all there always in the stones, in the people, in the dark energies and light energies. And if we focus and lighten up, it's so hard to explain and so simple because it's already there and we are already it all together. And I just believe that that this is a blessing beyond for and we are so proud to publish it.
Thank you.
It's James, it's such a pleasure to talk to you, such an experienced writer. I wanted to also mention as you know, I lived in LA for 20 years. So when you talk about in your other books, and I listened to another interview of yours about the troubadour and being a rock journalist, and he wrote James wrote one of the preeminent books about how to make it in the music business. And what was the name of that book?
By the Rainbow. How to succeed in music business without selling your soul.
Without selling your soul. Exactly. How to maintain in the music business without selling your soul. And with great advice. It was so interesting. And to hear you talking about that, it's just, and Emily's a rock and roller at heart too. So of course she knows the word like me. We know every word to every song. So it's been a big pleasure to be associated with you in any way.
Can we put in a plug for Jim's website for all his books? He's a prolific writer, New York Times bestseller. He's amazing. Can we put a plug in? Jim,
absolutely. What is your website? Say that, Palmer, because I didn't hear it well.
JamesRiordan.com.
JamesRiordan.com. Wonderful.
RIORDAN. Yes.
Hopefully someday you'll make it to Kentucky and we'll do a reading in person. And that would be really fun. We do have a reading. The book is already released. And of course, you can get it at rabbithousepress.com already. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the other local bookstores. We are having our first in-person reading with Palmer this Friday at the Carnegie Center in Lexington, Kentucky. And there will be food and drinks and a flautist, I know. And Palmer knows, and there'll be music. It's going to be a beautiful, and Palmer will be, of course, reading and signing books. And that's
October 6th, right?
October
Is it Saturday?
6th. Oh, is it Saturday?
Yeah.
Saturday, October 6th. Let me check this out. I thought it was Friday night, but it's October 6th. I do know that. So let me look at my calendar. It is Friday, October 6th.
I would have missed it.
From 5:30 to 7, and Emily and I make a mean charcuterie tray, and we're gonna have like some really cool stuff, food, and listen to Palmer read and answer questions to anybody that's there, and then sign her books. And I appreciate you all so much. I appreciate you for writing this book. And bless Rick Two Wolves and his whole life.
Love to meet him.
Yes.
Yes, you will.
Good. All right. This video will be available on YouTube as soon as I get it, and Facebook and everything as soon as I get it uploaded. I love you all, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.